Okie dokie. So, me again, try not to get too bored. So my topic today, what Jules has asked me to explain to you, is the effect of a housing system on a horse welfare. Because clearly, we try to talk today about group housing, and so clearly we need, first of all, understand what welfare is, which is a kind of a difficult topic, and clearly then the effect of housing on a horse welfare. So let's start with the first point. And so what is animal welfare to you? So who wants to reply? What actually animal welfare is? What do you think it is? Yep.
Pouvoir exprimer un comportement propre à son espèce.
Yeah, that's one aspect. Yeah. Who would like to add something?
Le respect de ses besoins fondamentaux.
Okay, okay. That's also correct.
Et je pense à la meilleure alimentation qu'on peut lui offrir et tous les soins qu'on peut procurer en fonction de ce qu'on demande à un cheval. C'est-à-dire que si on fait du sport avec un cheval, par exemple, eh ben on lui offrira les soins qui vont avec pour lui procurer du bien-être quand même.
Okay, so, yeah. So express the behavior, be treated well, be healthy, yeah? For you?
Peut-être diminuer le niveau de stress du cheval, qu'il soit détendu.
Yep, so welfare often has been defined as the lack of stress. So you could realize that just among us, now 50 people, and we have a different definition of welfare, just to understand how difficult is welfare, and the fact that too often, each person has a different idea of welfare. So this is why I think let's start with the basics. And one of the first definition of animal welfare by Broom was the welfare of an animal is its state as regards its attempt to cope with its environment. And what clearly missed a bit in all your definition is actually that the welfare is the state of the animal, okay? So it's not what we do for the animal. That's management, that's husbandry, okay? That's nutrition. But welfare is really something which relates to the animal. And then so when we speak about welfare, so you start thinking about that. And Duncan soon after said, neither health nor lack of stress nor fitness is necessary and nor sufficient to conclude that the animal had a good welfare. So as you can see, whatever you have said, the behavior, the lack of stress, the good feeding is not enough, okay? Because really, when we speak about welfare, we are speaking about what animals feel. So, okay, that's really important. So it's not what you do, but it's what the animal really feel. And clearly, again, is just not only the lack of a negative. Okay, it's not that if I'm not stressed, it means that I have a good welfare. So it's actually even the presence of positive situation. So this is why, when I was speaking about feeling fit and happy. And clearly, that's really hard because now we had lots of talking about the happy athletes. Even FEI say, the happy athletes, but what is an happy athlete? That's really tough. And why is tough? Because really, when we talk about what animals feel, clearly, okay, I'm trying to interpret something, and I should forget about what I do, but really focus on the feeling of the animal. And then it's really an interaction in many areas. So again, living well natural. But you can see, it's not that if I just take this animal and I put in nature and free, he might not be still in a good welfare condition, okay? And that's often kind of a wrong idea, that like, whatever is natural is fantastic, okay? That's just not always the case. And because, like, yeah, there is the living well, but there is also the fitness. So clearly, like, an animal which is in nature but has a fracture, I'm telling you that and no one is taking care of that fracture, his welfare is not so good, okay? And at the same time, so we have also the good mental health. So not only physical health, which is the kind of, I speak bad about vet because I am a vet. So for many vets, a horse which is fit and is healthy is equal to horses which is in a good welfare, but it's not enough. So you can see this is basically like, so many, and we actually there. That is a good welfare, where you have the combination of all the three, which is clearly difficult. So since welfare is so difficult, I like this definition because I'm trying to be an animal welfare scientist, or trying to be because I'm still learning, and every day we keep learning. So welfare is a term that describes a potentially measurable quality of a living animal at a particular time and in a scientific concept. So clearly, like, if I have to speak about the effect of housing on welfare, I clearly need to have evidence, okay? And one of my roles for the EFSA, the European Food Safety Authority, is just like be a scientist and provide evidence to the policymaker. And this is why I have to say that often many wrong beliefs are circulating in the equine industry member. And with that, I said I've been an industry member since too many years, I don't want to say. So, and this is why, like, we need, when we talk about welfare and the effect of anything on welfare, we need to try to be more accurate, precise, and possibly to measure things, as the avoiding distance, which I was telling you about. And basically, like, another point is that it's the status of the animal, is how basically the animal feels. So I really need to speak about this life worth living, but through the eyes of the animals. And when we can use observation, and that's correct, but we need to stop, try to think the horses are like like humans, and we think that what we like, they like. And this is why I want to highlight that we need to have the knowledges. And I think the fact that you are here, it means that you clearly care about increase your knowledges about behavior. As Costin said before, often we are not able to understand what the horse is trying to say to us because we don't recognize the behavior. So clearly knowledges in behavior are fundamental. And to measure the welfare, I really need to have data. And to the data that we usually collect, we can have some indirect measure that we call environmental-based measure, EBM. So exactly like, I ask, okay, how many times do you feed your horses and what type of feeding you do? So all the management that you were telling about. Or, when I can, that is the best way, I measure welfare using direct measure, so that we named animal-based measure. So really, they come from the horse, so it's the behavior. Okay, let's see in my group how many self-grooming I can count, okay? And how many injuries I had in this group, and I see how many actually injuries that are present. Or, I can also take health records. So, they come really from the animal. And more data based on ABM you can collect, better you can assess or measure the welfare of your animals. There are basically many systems, and you can see that they basically all start from the 5 freedoms that I know you know because but we cannot use the 5 freedom because they are too general, and as I said, welfare is number, is objective measure. So starting from the 5 freedom, currently we use this system, and you can see here the good housing. It's one of the 4 that actually are the principle that we need to measure. So today, basically, we're focusing on this, which is a good housing, and basically on the criteria comfort around resting, thermal comfort, a space to move freely. And again, so I want to point that that's only one of the 4. And in the 5 domain, which is similar, then there is a bit more on a positive side. So clearly, that is again just the Awin. So today we focus on good housing, so as the principle of good housing and the criteria, these 3 criteria. And so clearly, why is housing important for horse welfare? Clearly, because it's one of the principles of the welfare. Clearly, as an effect, and we need to make sure that, clearly in the housing, we have the horse keep his criteria. Nutrition, nutrition basically, is usually covering the good feeding principle. So, and this is why you don't see, or we don't really talk about nutrition when we talk about housing. But, clearly the movement and, the ability to rest, to sleep, and then clearly, they are all part of the effect of housing on horse behavior. So actually, the first point is actually how do we really keep horses and why we keep horses in this way. So these are data from UK, Netherlands, Sweden, Germany, and you can see that single box, is the majority. So in the world, horses are kept in single box in the majority of the case. So who can tell me about the housing, or the most common housing in Switzerland? Is Dr. Ponch? No, he's not here? Okay. Okay. So there are no data for Switzerland, so we could, yeah?
Le mode de détention en Suisse, c'est la majorité, c'est des box individuelles, oui. So the largest housing modus in Switzerland is individual box stall. Okay.
So Switzerland, it's in line with the literature, we would say. And that's common. And then we should ask why. Why Ovner wants their horses kept in single box? Because I want to also highlight that industry follow your demands. Okay, that's the first rule of business. I'm not a businessman, but if people ask for single box, then the industry is going to build single box. When more people are going to ask for group, then maybe the industry, they already might have some models, but they are still not so common. So, but why? This is another survey. So someone has asked, why you keep horses in single box? And these are the belief, or the answer of the people. So they believe that in single box, horses can have a better feeding management, individual management maybe. They can control parasites. Clearly, horses are more clean. That is a bit, I think, of be selfish because, if they're free and they're all, then you also need to clean. So the coat care. They believe that, if they are in a single box, there is a better protection from atmospheric agent. And again, there is reduction of risk of aggressive interaction with other horses. That's basically injury. And often, again, we're selfish, so clearly single box, it's easier for the groom. And I want to point a lot on these injury risk, because often, like, horses are kept in single box so often, not only because it's believed that there is less injuries due to conflict, but also because often, horses can injure it by themselves if you let them free. Okay, that's, again, it's a belief. So again, coming back to the effect of housing on welfare. So we need to understand that for housing, we need to have comfort around resting, thermal comfort, and easy of movement. So comfort around resting and easy of movement clearly are, if you want, interconnected. And what are the factors? Again, I come back with space allowance, because that is also another critical point, even in single boxes, because the question is, are those boxes big enough for the horses? And why we have different sizes of shoes, but we have the same size of boxes, even if horses' size change so much? That's another question, but that's an almost ethical question. Then clearly, then we have the group size. I guess today you are going to understand how big should be this group. And clearly, those are interconnected, because if I have more horses in the same space, then it means that I have less space allowance for each horses. And then clearly, in these criteria, I need to also understand my activity record. So are my horses actually free of movement? That's one of the freedom, And am I able to record how the horse move? And is this movement enough for wherever the horse is in nature should move? You have an idea of how much a horse moves in a day, or should move in a day? She said 20 kilometers. Okay. 18 kilometers. Who have a horse? So, and do you have an idea of how much kilometer your horse in a single box does? Even if you go one a day for 40 minutes to train? Okay, I think you answer by yourself, no? So clearly you have a huge problem with the freedom of movement in single box. And then we have clearly the situation about comfort around resting. So, and then we come for comfort around resting, we have to consider again the space, because horses are quite picky. If the space is not enough, they might not lie down. And surprisingly, horses need to sleep in lateral decubitus, so completely down. And clearly, if the box is too small, they might not do it. If they are afraid that if they lie down, they get injuries or they get stuck, they might not lie down at all. And then you can have sleep deprivation. We spoke about sleep deprivation in the first meeting. But it's not, in this case, it's not only space, but really we're speaking about comfort. So would you be happy to sleep always on a floor? You might do one night, 2 nights. After a while, then you might have back pain. So even horses, clearly, they might have problems when the bedding is not high enough. And unfortunately, even like the dimension of the box, I have to say that even the height of the bedding is not under-regulated. So we got crazy in EFSA, tried to figure it out, but there are not enough studies about. And then clearly, like, you know, the type of the litter has an effect, and even the quality of the litter. And that is important, not only for the effect of the litter on the comfort, but clearly then for horses, then we open up the problem, the health problems, like respiratory problems, colic. And then there is also, like, you know, now I'm working with some microbiologists, and then like even the effect of eating like, you know, dirty straw on a gut flora. So now there are different types of litters, organic, inorganic. And again, each horse has an individuality, and each horse might have health records different. So again, why each horse should be stable in the same space, on the same litter, you know. So we should move from that if we are really looking about welfare. Again, then ventilation. Horses, I think their Achilles is respiratory problems. And like, you know, if you have a horse with respiratory problem, I'm sorry to say, clearly single box and closed housing is the worst that you could ever done. Like, you know, you could spend tons of money on cortisone and aerosol, but like, you know, your vet will never be able to fix your horses. What might fix your horses is a green pasture and, like, you know, free hay. And again, about comfort around resting, I always think the sleep could be a perfect indicator of welfare. And if you are able to see your horse is sleeping, then you are a good breeders. So, and even if they sleep like during the day, that means they're super safe, okay? Because in nature, they tend to sleep more between 2 and 4, but like really, like, you know, as us, if they relax, they might have a nap during a day. And then this is why, like, you know, simple stuff, like is like the self-grooming, which is, again, is a positive welfare indicator, then sleeping. So, okay, yeah, if I can see that my horse sleep regularly, then maybe, yeah, the housing is actually giving the criteria, the comfort around resting. Then thermal comfort. This is another point which we are getting crazy in EFSA right now. So, because, you know, this concept, thermal neutral zone, is basically based on mainly on production animals, and clearly horses are not really production animals. So, and it's basically the, you know, from A to D is the range of temperature where the animal basically can thermoregulate without really any particular effort, let's say like that. So outside A and D, the animal can still thermoregulate, but this thermoregulation causes an energy loss. Sorry, if it's too difficult, stop me, but that's an important point. And then clearly, like, you know, you can see that this energy loss, they increase. And then we have here, like, you know, cold stress. Until then, we have that the horses is not able to thermoregulate anymore, so the temperature drop, and they die. And here, that's particularly uncommon in horses. But this, considering our climate change, is getting more and more and more common, like, you know. And basically, you can see that the horses really start spending energy for thermoregulate. At some point, he loses the ability of thermoregulate, and then he has a proper heat stroke. And I don't know, and I hope you've never seen horses in heat stroke, because they become neurologically really bad, and they might die, and might die in a short period. So do you have any idea of what is A, B, C, and D? So basically just B and C, it's the comfort zone, which what we would like. So between B and C, the animal doesn't need to activate any thermoregulation to be okay. Okay, so it's in the perfect thermal situation, so it doesn't need to sweat, it doesn't need to paint, it doesn't need to do anything. So do you have an idea what temperature, or have you studied about thermoneutral zone? Is quite famous. So when do you think, yeah?
Depending on other factors, like moisture and movement. It's dependent on other factors like moisture, content of the air, and air movement.
Yeah, so basically, because the thermoneutral zone is based on effective temperature, which include already temperature and humidity. And they are calculated in a chamber, so when the horses cannot move. And clearly, the speed wind, clearly it's important, but in an experimental setting, you try to be in that situation. So, but again, what are A and D? I'm speaking about temperature because it's easy for you. But consider the ideal situation between 40 and 60% humidity, okay? Because clearly humidity affects the perception. No idea? When do you think your horse feel cold? When you get cold?
Also ich denke, dass es zwischen -5 bis vielleicht 20 Grad ist.
So -5 to 20. So A is -5 and D 20. Any other idea? Okie dokie. So this is based on,
between 5 and 25 degrees.
Yes, we're getting more correct. So basically, C is between 20 and 25. D is between 25 and 28. As you can see, this is the range of humidity that we have. And basically, A is usually considered 0, and 5 is B. And clearly, as was mentioned, those are ideal situations that have been measured and in a chamber room, like in an ideal situation. But there are clearly other factors that can affect the perception of the cold and the perception of the heat. And clearly, you can understand if your horse is in a comfort zone, also watching the animals and shelter seeking. So when they look for shelter or seeking for shade, a good behavior that you could monitor to see actually they are really, too hot. So they are not stupid. No? So if they're hot, the first stuff that they do is, and there is the shade, they might start using the shade. And again, they cold. So if they have the shelter, they might start using the shelter. And this is why, you can monitor the behavior of your horses and then, understand if there is a thermal zone, but you need to give them the option. So, you need still to offer a shelter. You need to give them the option of a shade, and then you might monitor. Clearly, the number which I show you comes from literature. We need to understand that there is a breed effect and also an adaptation. Okay, so it's not that animals are not able to adapt, but clearly, even for the thermoregulation, there are studies done. The horses need at least 2 weeks. Okay, and they might get habit. If a horse was living in North Europe and comes like in the south, and clearly like, completely like, different 10-degree difference, clearly it might be for a bit of time in stress, in heat stress, and then he tried to, kind of adapt. But like, clearly during that period, you should avoid go for a gallop under the sun, okay? Because you should say, oh, he might be already like, in a phase which is adjusting to this new environment. This is why, like, when you manage horses, if you know the basis, then you can use this information. And again, try to remember that clearly, like, they can also cope and adapt to the cold. And as it was also mentioned, clearly, like, when animals generate heat, and if they are free of move, they clearly, like, they go for a run and they increase easily their temperature, okay, because they are able to generate. The problem is, again, if they are in a truck, maybe they cannot move at all, or they are in a single box, they cannot move at all, then clearly, like, cold can become a problem. And I think, yeah, we can stop here.